My name is Brittany Turner. I'm 32, a data analyst clawing my way back after a rough divorce. I thought I'd seen betrayal, but nothing prepared me for what my dad did. Last Christmas, while I was trying to keep it together at a family party, I borrowed my brother's phone to check an email. That's when I saw it, a post on my dad's social media, staring me in the face like a slap. If you could erase one person from the family, should it be Brittany? She's a failure in her career and her marriage. My heart sank. The comments were worse. My mom, my sister, even family friends, they all chimed in, tearing me apart. She's always been a disappointment, one said. We'd be better off without her, another added. I stood there frozen, my hands shaking. How could my own dad do this? My own family voting to erase me like I was nothing. I'd spent years rebuilding my life, landing freelance contracts, proving myself only to have them humiliate me in front of thousands online. It wasn't just a post. It cost me a client a deal I'd worked months to secure. I could have crumbled, but something snapped inside me. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. This is my story, a true story of how I fought back and taught them a lesson they'd never forget, never mess with me. Drop a comment and tell me what you'd do if your family betrayed you like this. Hit subscribe if you believe no one should tear you down, especially not your own blood. After my divorce, I poured everything into my work, but my family never acknowledged my efforts. I thought I had finally found my footing in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The ink on my divorce papers was barely dry when I threw myself into my job as a data analyst. I spent countless late nights crunching numbers, building dashboards for clients, and chasing freelance contracts to prove I could stand on my own. Landing a major project with a local startup felt like a victory, $10,000 in my pocket, and a chance to rebuild my life. I wasn't just surviving. I was clawing my way up, determined to show the world I wouldn't be defined by a failed marriage. But no matter how hard I worked, my family saw me as the black sheep. My dad, James Turner, a retired banker with a knack for control, never let me forget it. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" he'd say, over Sunday dinners, his voice sharp as a knife. My sister, Lindsay Turner, 35, was the golden child, a freelance journalist whose bylines in local papers made Dad beam with pride. Lindsay had a way of flaunting her success, dropping stories about her latest article or networking event while I sat there forcing a smile. "Brittany, maybe if you tried harder you'd get somewhere," she once said, her tone dripping with pity. I'd bite my tongue, knowing arguing was pointless. My mom, Linda Turner, wasn't any better. At 58, she'd retired from teaching and spent her days doting on Lindsay. When I landed that big contract, I called Mom, hoping for a shred of praise. "That's nice, dear," she said, distracted, before launching into how Lindsay's latest piece was so inspiring. I felt invisible. Even my brother, Ethan Turner, 28, a software engineer who usually stayed out of the drama, would shrug when I vented. "That's just how they are," he'd say, scrolling through his phone. I tried to brush it off, telling myself family was supposed to be complicated, but the constant comparisons stung. Growing up, it wasn't always like this. Dad used to call me his little analyst, proud when I'd solve math problems at the kitchen table. But after Lindsay started racking up awards in high school, his focus shifted. By the time I was in college studying computer science, Dad's praise was reserved for Lindsay's journalism degree. When my marriage fell apart 3 years ago, he didn't even call, just sent a text saying, "You'll figure it out." Mom echoed his indifference while Lindsay offered half-hearted advice like, "Maybe focus on your career instead of dating." I felt like an outsider in my own family, always scrambling to prove I was enough. The worst part, Dad's obsession with appearances. He'd built a reputation in Baton Rouge as a respected banker, always hosting community events or posting about family values on social media. His profile with 2,000 followers, friends, former colleagues, neighbors was his pride and joy. He'd share photos of Lindsay's articles or Mom's garden, but never once mentioned my work. I'd see his posts and feel a pang, wondering why I wasn't worth bragging about. once I commented on his page sharing a link to a dashboard I'd built for a client. His reply, "Good effort, Brittany. Good effort." Like I was a kid with a participation trophy. I kept pushing forward, though. My apartment in Baton Rouge was small, but mine paid for with my own money. I'd stay up late refining my skills, taking online courses to stay sharp in a cutthroat industry. My clients liked my work, clean, precise, reliable. One even said I'd save their startup from a bad investment with my analysis. Those moments kept me going even when family dinners felt like walking into a lion's den. I'd sit there listening to Dad praise Lindsay's latest feature or Mom gush about her volunteer work, while my achievements were met with silence or backhanded remarks. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. Dad's need to control the narrative, Mom's blind loyalty to Lindsay, even Ethan's quiet indifference, they were all building to something. I kept hoping for a change, a moment where they'd see me for who I was, not who I wasn't. But every conversation left me more isolated, like I was shouting into a void. I didn't know then that their resentment was about to spill over in a way I'd never imagined, in a way that would push me to fight back harder than I ever had before. The Christmas party at my parents' house started brightly, but I soon realized I wasn't welcome. I stepped into their sprawling Baton Rouge home, the air thick with the scent of pine and cinnamon, expecting a night of forced smiles and small talk. I'd braced myself for the usual family tension, but nothing could have prepared me for how vicious it would get. Dad, always the center of attention, was holding court in the living room, his voice booming as he recounted his glory days as a banker. Lindsay perched nearby, sipping wine and nodding along, her smug grin a silent taunt. Mom bustled around, playing the perfect hostess, her laughter ringing out whenever Lindsay spoke. I stood on the sidelines, clutching a glass of eggnog, feeling like a guest at my own family's celebration. It didn't take long for the jabs to start. As we sat down for dinner, Dad turned to me, his eyes glinting. "So Brittany still crunching numbers for those little startups?" he asked, his tone laced with condescension. I forced a nod, mentioning a recent project I'd landed. "It's a big deal for me," I said, hoping for a flicker of approval. Lindsay snorted. "Big deal. Writing articles that actually get read is a big deal," she said, tossing her hair. The table erupted in chuckles, and Mom patted Lindsay's hand, beaming. "Your sister's latest piece was so moving," Mom said, not even glancing my way. I gripped my fork, my face burning, but I swallowed the urge to snap back. The digs kept coming. Dad leaned back, smirking. "Brittany, maybe if you'd picked a real career like Lindsay, you wouldn't be starting over after that divorce." My stomach twisted. The word divorce hung in the air, and I felt every eye on me, cousins, aunts, family, friends, all pretending not to hear. Lindsay piled on, her voice sugary. "I mean, some people just aren't cut out for marriage or success." I wanted to scream, to tell them I'd just secured a $10,000 contract, but the words stuck in my throat. Mom changed the subject, gushing about Lindsay's new column, while I sat there invisible again. I needed a break. Excusing myself, I slipped into the hallway, my chest tight. My brother Ethan was sprawled on a couch, scrolling through his phone as usual. "Can I borrow that to check an email?" I asked, desperate for a distraction. He shrugged, handing it over without looking up. I opened the email app, but a notification caught my eye, a social media alert from Dad's profile. Curious, I clicked. My blood ran cold. There it was, a post from James Turner, my own father, staring me in the face. "If you could erase one person from the family, should it be Brittany? She's a failure in her career and her marriage." My hands trembled as I scrolled through the comments. Mom had written, "She's always been a disappointment." Lindsay added, "Family's better off without her dragging us down." Even family friends chimed in. "Yeah, she's kind of a mess." I stood frozen, the glow of the phone burning my eyes. My own family publicly shredding me. Dad's profile with thousands of followers, his old colleagues, our neighbors, people I'd known my whole life was a stage for their cruelty. I clicked again, seeing more comments pile up, each one a dagger. Brittany never got it together, one read. She's the weak link, another said. I felt like I was drowning, the festive chatter from the dining room fading into a dull roar. My pulse raced, my mind spinning with questions. Why would Dad do this? Why would Mom and Lindsay join in? Even Ethan had liked the post, though he hadn't commented. I handed his phone back, my voice barely a whisper. Thanks, I said, walking away, my legs unsteady. I didn't confront them, not yet. I couldn't, but as I stood there alone in the hallway, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just a family squabble. This was a betrayal I'd make them answer for. I sat in my car, my phone glowing with evidence I couldn't unsee. The quiet parking lot in Baton Rouge felt like a refuge from the chaos I'd just escaped. My hands shook as I opened the social media app, my fingers racing to capture every piece of that public attack. I took screenshots of the post and every comment, saving them to a folder I named Evidence. My chest tightened with each click, knowing these words weren't just cruel, they were costing me. A client had dropped me last week a $5,000 freelance contract, gone with a vague email about concerns over reliability. Now I saw the connection. That post, shared with thousands of followers, neighbors, Dad's old colleagues, people I'd grown up around, wasn't just a family fight. It was sabotage. I needed someone to ground me. I dialed my best friend Holly Reed, a 33-year-old HR manager who'd always been my voice of reason. It was late, but Holly answered quickly. Brittany, what's wrong? She asked, sensing the edge in my silence. I poured out everything, not the party details, but the sting of what I'd found on Ethan's phone. They're trashing me online, Holly. It's public and it's already hurt my work. I lost a client because of it. My voice wavered, but I kept it steady. Holly didn't flinch. That's defamation, plain and simple. She said, her tone sharp. You can sue. That kind of public post hurting your reputation, it's actionable. You need a lawyer who knows privacy law. Her words hit me like a lifeline. Sue my own family. It felt like a leap, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was an attack on my livelihood, broadcast to a network of people who knew me. Holly pressed on. I know a lawyer in Baton Rouge, Michael Carter. He's sharp, specializes in defamation cases. I'll send you his number. I exhaled, grateful for her clarity. Holly, I don't even know where to start, I admitted. You start by fighting back, she said firmly. You've worked too hard to let this slide. After we hung up, Holly's text came through, Michael Carter's contact details. I saved it, my mind racing but focused. I pulled out my laptop, the dim streetlight barely illuminating the screen. I started organizing, transferring screenshots into a document. I added notes, the post's timestamp, the number of views, already over 1,000, and the names tied to each comment. I dug through my emails, finding the one from the client who'd bailed. Recent concerns about your professionalism, it read, sent hours after the post went live. That was my proof, the link between their words and my loss. I built a timeline, starting with when I'd borrowed Ethan's phone and seen the notification. Every detail mattered. It was nearly 1 a.m. when I closed my laptop. My eyes burned, but a quiet strength settled in me. This wasn't about settling scores. It was about holding them accountable. Dad thought he could air his resentment to the world without consequence. Lindsay's smugness, Mom's complicity, even Ethan's small role, they all added up. I wasn't the failure they wanted everyone to believe. I'd rebuilt my life, fought for every contract, every step forward. As I started the car, the engine's hum matched the resolve building inside me. They'd crossed a line and I was done letting them walk over me. I was ready to take this fight to the next level. Back in my Baton Rouge apartment, I sat at my kitchen table, the weight of my decision pressing down. I'd spent hours organizing evidence, but before escalating, I wanted to give my family a chance to fix their mess. I opened our family group chat, me, Dad, Mom Lindsay and Ethan, and typed a message, my fingers steady despite the anger simmering inside. I saw the post. It's public. It's damaging and it's wrong. Delete it now and post a public apology, or I'll take this further. I hit send, staring at the screen, waiting for a response that might salvage something. James replied first within minutes. It was just a joke, Brittany. Don't make a big deal out of it. A joke. My career was taking hits, and he called it a joke. Lindsay chimed in next, her message dripping with disdain. You're being way too sensitive. It's just social media, get over it. Mom didn't respond at all, her silence louder than any comment. Ethan sent a private text. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just liked the post. It was something, but not enough. I read their messages again. My jaw clenched. They weren't sorry, they were doubling down. That was it. I wasn't begging for respect anymore. I called Michael Carter, the lawyer Holly recommended. His office was a small, no-nonsense setup in downtown Baton Rouge, and he agreed to meet me the next morning. At 9 a.m., I walked in, my laptop and a folder of printed screenshots in hand. Michael, a wiry man in his 40s with a sharp gaze, listened as I laid out the situation. My dad posted something online that trashed my reputation, I said, sliding the screenshots across his desk. It cost me a freelance contract, and I'm sure it's not done causing damage. Michael skimmed the evidence, his brow furrowing. This is textbook defamation, he said. Public false statements causing harm to your reputation. In Louisiana, we can build a case if you've got proof of damages. I had that proof. I pulled up an email from the client who dropped me a $5,000 project for a local startup. The email, dated hours after James's post, cited concerns about your professionalism as the reason for pulling out. I showed Michael another email, this one from a potential client who'd gone silent after initially reaching out. I was supposed to pitch them next week, I told him, but they stopped responding after the post got traction. Michael nodded, jotting notes. We'll need more, but this is a strong start. Social media posts like this, especially with his following, can do real damage. Let's file a defamation lawsuit against your father. The word lawsuit felt heavy, but I didn't flinch. What do we need? I asked. Michael outlined the process: a formal complaint, more evidence of harm, and a demand letter to James before filing. Back home, I dove into gathering more proof. I combed through my inbox, finding a third email from a colleague who'd asked, "Is everything okay?" Saw some stuff online. That was new, a hit to my professional network. I tracked down screenshots of the post's engagement, over 1,500 views, dozens of shares. I contacted another client, a small business owner I'd worked with, who confirmed she'd seen the post through a mutual connection. It didn't look good, she admitted, her tone apologetic. Every piece of evidence fueled my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for me, I was fighting for the life I'd built. James thought he could dismiss me as a failure, but I'd spent years proving him wrong. Landing contracts, rebuilding after my divorce. Lindsay's arrogance, Mom's silence, even Ethan's half-hearted apology, they weren't going to stop me. I worked late into the night organizing my case, emailing Michael updates. He sent back a draft of the demand letter, formal and direct, ordering James to remove the post and issue a public apology or face legal action. I read it, my pulse steady. This was my line in the sand. By Monday morning, I'd sent the demand letter through Michael's office. I didn't expect James to comply, he'd already called it a joke. But I'd given them a chance, and they'd thrown it back in my face. As I sealed the envelope with my final evidence from Michael, I felt a shift. This wasn't about family anymore. It was about accountability. They'd tried to erase me, but I was done being invisible. I was ready to face them in court and make them answer for what they'd done. A month later, the Christmas party, I stood in a courtroom facing my family for the last time. The Baton Rouge courthouse was cold, its wooden benches creaking under the weight of tension. I adjusted my blazer, my hands steady, as I sat beside Michael Carter, my lawyer. Across the room, James sat rigid, his jaw set, refusing to meet my eyes. Mom fidgeted beside him, her face tight with discomfort. Lindsay, arms crossed, glared at me from the back row, while Ethan slouched, looking anywhere but at me. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, called the case. My heart thudded, but I was ready. Michael stood, presenting our evidence with precision. He displayed the screenshots, the Post's damning words projected on a screen for all to see. This public statement by James Turner caused measurable harm to Brittany's professional reputation, he said, his voice clear. He showed the email from my client who'd canceled a $5,000 contract hours after the post went viral. This wasn't just a family dispute, Michael continued. It was a deliberate attack seen by thousands, costing Ms. Turner her livelihood. I glanced at James, expecting some sign of guilt, but he just stared ahead, unyielding. When it was his turn, James stood, his voice calm but defiant. It was a harmless post meant to spark discussion, he said. I didn't think it would hurt anyone. The judge raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Michael countered, presenting the engagement metrics: over 2,000 views, shares spreading the post beyond Baton Rouge. You didn't think a public claim of failure would harm your daughter, Michael pressed. James faltered, muttering about exaggeration, but the judge's expression hardened. I felt a flicker of hope, but it didn't erase the sting of his refusal to back down. The hearing ended without a ruling, the judge needing time to review. I left the courtroom, my legs heavy but my resolve intact. Outside, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Lindsay's text came first, venomous and sharp. You're so selfish, Brittany, dragging us through this for your ego. Mom's call followed, her voice low and accusing. How could you do this to your father? After everything we've done for you, you're so ungrateful. I listened, my throat tight, but didn't respond. Their words felt like echoes of the post, doubling down on their disdain. I hung up, staring at the courthouse steps, wondering if I'd ever been part of their family at all. Ethan caught up with me in the parking lot, his face pale. Brittany, I messed up, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Liking that post, I didn't think it would blow up like this. I'm sorry. His eyes met mine, genuine regret in them. I'll back you up, whatever you need. I nodded, a lump in my throat. Thanks, Ethan, I said softly. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall between us. He shuffled away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Back at my apartment, I replayed the day. James's stubborn defense, Lindsay's venom, Mom's accusations. They hadn't changed. They saw me as the problem, the one who'd dared to fight back. But Ethan's apology lingered, a small spark of hope in the wreckage. I opened my laptop, reviewing the evidence again, adding notes from the hearing. Michael had warned me the case could drag on, but I wasn't backing down. That post had cost me a contract, a client's trust, and years of struggling to prove my worth. I wasn't just fighting for money, I was fighting for my name, my life. As I sat there, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Lindsay. You'll regret this, Brittany. I didn't reply. Their words couldn't hurt me anymore, not like they used to. I'd stood in that courtroom, faced their judgment, and walked out stronger. Whatever came next, I'd face it on my terms, not theirs. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about standing up for myself, something they'd never understand. After the trial, my family thought they could force my silence, but I was ready to expose the truth. The weight of the past week's courtroom stares, whispered accusations pushed me to act. I couldn't let their narrative win. I logged into a local Baton Rouge community forum, a digital hub where neighbors and business owners traded stories and opinions. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then began typing. I laid out my story, the public attack that cost me a contract, the lawsuit I'd filed, and a truth I'd kept buried for years. James had always presented himself as a pillar of integrity, a retired banker turned small business owner. But I revealed what he'd hidden from his followers. 2 years ago, he'd convinced me to invest $10,000 in his hardware store, promising a share of the profits. It's a family venture, he'd said, his voice warm with assurance. I'd trusted him, scraping together every cent from my freelance earnings. But the profits never came. Month after month, James dodged my questions with excuses: slow sales, bad timing, unexpected costs. I'd let it slide, hoping for honesty, but now I saw it for what it was: another betrayal. I posted the details, including emails where he'd promised repayment never fulfilled. I hit publish, my pulse steady but my stomach tight. The forum exploded within hours. Comments flooded in, locals shocked at James's deception. "I shopped at his store for years, never knew he'd do this," one user wrote. Another, a former client of mine, added, "Brittany's work is solid. Turner's the one who looks shady now." The backlash grew, with posts calling out my family's hypocrisy. Someone tagged Lindsay, whose polished online persona as a journalist crumbled under scrutiny. "Your sister's no saint," either, a commenter noted, referencing her role in the smear. Mom's silence online didn't spare her. Users criticized her for standing by James. Ethan stayed quiet, his apology still fresh in my mind. By morning, my post had thousands of views. Local business owners, some I'd worked with, shared it, amplifying the outrage. A reporter from a Baton Rouge news outlet messaged me asking for an interview. I declined. I didn't need more attention, just accountability. But the pressure was on my family now. James's store, already struggling, faced boycotts from regulars who'd read my post. A neighbor emailed me saying she'd stopped shopping there after learning the truth. The community's response wasn't just validation, it was a reckoning. My phone buzzed with notifications, but I ignored most. Lindsay sent a text, her words sharp. "You're ruining Dad's business just to play victim." I didn't respond. Mom left a voicemail, her tone icy. "This is low, Brittany. Airing family business like this, you've gone too far." I deleted it, their accusations no longer carrying weight. Ethan called, his voice hesitant. "I saw your post," he said. "I get why you did it. I'm not mad." His support, small as it was, felt like a lifeline in the storm I'd unleashed. I sat back, staring at the forum's growing thread. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my voice. For years, I'd let James's promises, Lindsay's jabs, and Mom's indifference define me. No more. I drafted a final statement for the forum, my hands steady. "I'm done letting my family's lies shape my story," I wrote. "I've cut ties with them, not because I wanted to, but because they left me no choice." I posted it, the words, a declaration of freedom. The community's response was overwhelming: supportive messages, offers to connect me with new clients. A local freelancer even invited me to a networking event, a chance to rebuild what James's actions had damaged. As I closed my laptop, a weight lifted. The $10,000 was gone, but so was the hold my family had over me. I'd exposed their truth, not just for me, but for anyone they might hurt next. James's store might survive, but his reputation wouldn't. Lindsay's career would take a hit, and Mom's silence would haunt her. Ethan was the only bridge left, fragile, but there. I didn't know what came next, but I'd face it without their shadow over me. I'd chosen my own path, and I wasn't looking back. 6 months later, I stood firm on my own, no longer bound by my old family. The Baton Rouge sun filtered through my new apartment's windows, a small but bright space I'd made my own. The storm of the past year had settled, leaving behind a transformed world. James's post, once a public wound, had vanished from the internet, deleted under pressure from the lawsuit's fallout. The local banking association, where he'd held influence as a retired banker, issued a formal reprimand for his unethical conduct online, stripping away the respect he'd clung to. Neighbors who once greeted him warmly now crossed the street to avoid him, his hardware store nearly empty most days. Linda and Lindsay faced their own reckoning. The community forum I'd posted on continued to buzz with threads dissecting their roles in the smear. Mom's silence, once a shield, became a mark against her. Locals called her complicit, her social invitations drying up. Lindsay's carefully curated image as a journalist cracked under the weight of public scrutiny. Her colleagues distanced themselves, and her bylines appeared less frequently, her name tainted by association. The Baton Rouge social scene, tight-knit and unforgiving, had turned its back on them both. Ethan, though, had stayed true to his word, reaching out quietly, his support, a steady presence. I'd spent those 6 months rebuilding piece by piece. Holly had been my rock, meeting me for coffee weekly, her sharp advice cutting through my doubts. "You're not just surviving, Brittany, you're thriving." She'd set her smile warm. She connected me with a new client, a local nonprofit needing a freelance designer, which led to a steady contract worth thousands. Ethan, too, played a part, introducing me to a friend who ran a marketing firm. That connection landed me another project, my portfolio growing stronger than ever. I'd moved out of my old apartment, leaving behind memories of late-night evidence gathering, and into this new space, a symbol of my fresh start. The lawsuit hadn't just forced the post's removal. It had shifted something in me. I'd learned a hard truth: betrayal, even from family, didn't deserve forgiveness if it came without accountability. James had never apologized, his pride too entrenched. Mom's voicemails, once sharp with blame, had stopped entirely. Lindsay's occasional texts laced with resentment went unanswered. I'd cut them out, not with anger but with clarity. Ethan was the exception, his regret genuine, his actions proving he wanted to rebuild trust. We weren't close yet, but we were trying, meeting for lunch occasionally, our conversations cautious but real. I sat at my desk reflecting on the journey, the pain of that Christmas party, the sting of that post, the courtroom's tension. They'd forged me into someone new. I wasn't the failure James had painted, nor the victim Lindsay accused me of being. I was Brittany, a woman who'd fought for her name and won. The lesson was clear: family ties didn't justify betrayal. You don't owe loyalty to those who tear you down, no matter their blood. I'd chosen to stand up, to demand respect, and it had cost me a family but gained me a life. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you. Your support, whether through shared posts or quiet encouragement, kept me going. I'm stronger now, living on my terms, surrounded by people like Holly and Ethan who lift me up. If my story resonates, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you faced betrayal from those closest to you? How did you find the strength to move forward? Your voices matter, and I'd love to hear them. This isn't just my story, it's a reminder that we all have the power to reclaim our truth.